morning. I'm Doug Schoen. I'm here with my friend and colleague John LeBoutillier and our senior producer Martin Hinton. Martin, who has particular experience having worked on a string and series of documentaries, some under high risk in Iraq and I think Afghanistan as well. Martin, what's your take on the Bergdahl prisoner exchange?
Aside from any experience, I've never been to Iraq or Afghanistan.
I apologize.
No, that's quite all right. But did some stuff in the southern Philippines. I think most sort of educational for me is the experience I had interviewing Vietnam vets, Korean War vets, and World War II vets when I did military history documentaries with Oliver North for the show We Have War Stories. And the one thing I'm always left with is Bud Day, who received the Medal of Honor.
Just died a month ago.
Just died recently, yeah. I interviewed him down in his home in Florida, and he talked a lot off camera, actually, about the point that all people can be driven to, that they break, and their behavior is something that, you know, any reasonable, certainly any other prisoner looks at and goes, you know what, everyone after a while breaks. And as we learn more and more about Bergdahl and his personality prior to joining the military, his two previous walkabouts, if you will, where he sort of left his post in peculiar terms to me, why was he still there if that's the case? And then if he's captured and he tries to escape and maybe he tries to assimilate to get along. I mean, I said to someone recently, they were like, you know, I hear he only speaks Pashtun. And I said, well, if they come to you and they say, listen, if you want to eat, you better start asking for water and bread in our language. You ask in English, you're not getting a bite. Oh, and you're not going to sleep? And they read about what psychological warfare. I mean, we're dealing with a sophisticated enemy. If they get a Western-trained psychiatrist in there who's willing to use the kind of tools we know we've used down at Guantanamo to reduce the psychological willpower, well, that's because it's a battle for the mind, isn't it? You know, the body's easy to break.
So would you have done this deal, Martin, knowing what you know?
Well, knowing what I know now, listen, I think that if he volunteered, went over there, you got to bring him home. If they investigate and he is a deserter or he was AWOL or whatever the legal classifications within the military that exist, if there's evidence for that, perhaps there should be prosecution. And I also think that if there is evidence of that, they need to consider the idea that he was a captive for 5 years. If it turns out he was tortured, you know, I think there's an element of compassion there that might argue time served is a fair way to solve this and move us past it.
John, your view is somewhat different from Martin's.
Well, I take a different view in the sense that I'm looking at this thing that it's like taking a thermometer and dipping it into this issue of our conduct of the war, the way the administration, and really two administrations have run the war in Afghanistan, and just this little dip you pull out, you find the Secretary of Defense disagrees with 8 or 6 platoon members who were right here in this building last week, being on Megyn Kelly's show, who were with Bergdahl at that base. And the Secretary of Defense says, I don't know anything about people dying while they were out looking. It's like the VA scandal. You dip it in and you pull it out, you discover no one tells the truth. There's a series of lies from every public official, confusion over the facts. The president, the day after, says, oh, yes, we notified Congress. Turns out he didn't notify Congress. Then they said we don't have to notify them. He was sick. We had to do it. Can we please get the truth on anything?
To me, there's a very simple proposition. Yes, we want to bring our boys home, and I take it that Bergdahl now may be a very different person for a variety of reasons than he was when he was enlisted. But at what price? 5 senior Taliban commanders who now are under the most minimal degree of supervision. To me, it was too heavy a price to pay, and we could well all face the impact.
Doug, we haven't explored what you brought up last night or the other night on TV. This is new. This is Monday. We were on last night. Right. You brought up that the administration may have, you've heard off the record, paid cash along with the 5 guys to the Haqqani network, which is the group that originally took him. Why not make a deal for more money, fewer Taliban people? That I could have seen, right?
I could as well. Martin, what's your reaction to what John and I say?
Well, I mean, I think that with the 5 Taliban that released, they were combined 50-year prisoners of the at Guantanamo. What they know about how we treat prisoners is in itself valuable. You talk about the ability they have to prepare them for what kind of questions you get asked, or what they say to you, or how they treat you, or how they behave. You know, what their weaknesses are. Because if these people are, in fact, that senior, they're not going to have come away from this experience as prisoners without takeaway. They've learned as well. And now they're in a position where they can recover and recuperate. And as they've apparently suggested, you know, return to the fight in some capacity.
Any chance we've turned any of them?
Well, that's what you wonder. You know, I mean, everyone talks about, you know, they make reference to Homeland, and for me, it's Frank Sinatra and the Manchurian Candidate, right? Well, you have to think that there's someone on the other side looking at these 5 guys who've been here for a decade each, thinking, okay.
With that, I'm going to thank you for being here. This is an interesting take, some points that we haven't really heard made about the prisoner exchange, and Bo Bergdahl. We'll be right back with you very shortly. Thanks for joining Political Insiders.